Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
All of our guests today, including John Shannon, standing by for his first hit of this new Donnie and Dolly season, brought to you by the Vancouver Giants. Giants kick off their preseason Friday night at the beautiful Port Coquitlam Community Center. Puck drop is at 7 p.m. Their regular season home opener Friday, September 22nd, 7 p.m. at the LEC out in Langley. Get single game and season tickets now at vancouvergiants.com/season tickets. As we're joined now by NHL analyst, co-host of the Bob McCowan podcast, John Shannon, who is in Lloydminster as we speak. How are you, John, and how's the summer, and what are you doing up there?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me back. It's always a treat to be on at home. We're John Gibbons and I, the old Blue Jays manager, are here to. We're at a hockey banquet tonight for the Lloydminster Bobcats of the AJHL. So we're raising some money for junior hockey here, and it's we've had a blast already, and we haven't even started with the real party yet. So it's gonna be fun. By the way, the last time I saw Toigo. You're talking about the Giants. Toigo was with us at the BC Hockey Hall of Fame this summer when one of his teams was inducted into the hall. Yeah. The one that Milan Lucic was on. They won the Memorial Cup.
Yeah. 206. Yeah. 206.
What an event that was, and it was highlighted with Duncan Keith and Brent Seabrook getting inducted into the hall. And if you have a chance to find it, it's got to be on YouTube. Watch Brent Seabrook's speech. It was spectacular, and when he started to break down how honored he was to get in the hall, to watch his 10-year-old son come to his side and try to comfort his dad was as emotional as you're ever going to get. It was a spectacular night, and the guys at the Hall of Fame in Penticton, as usual, did a great job.
Yeah, we'll try to get Brett on the show. The Lloydminster Bobcats used to be called the Blazers. Amongst their alumni, Wade Redden and Scott Hartnell.
Yep.
Well, I'd tell you what, we guys like Clark MacArthur, Braden Holtby's are from this neck of the woods. Right, a lot of good hockey players came out of here.
Yeah. John, before we get into the NHL, I want to talk about, because you're a TV guy, you're a media guy, you're still in the media, as a matter of fact. Last time I checked, anyway.
But I hope so.
Over in Europe, they're allowing media to talk to officials after hockey games. They're doing that at the Swedish league, for instance. What do you think of that?
Well, I would say that I think if you did it for 1,341 regular season games in the NHL, I think it would get a little daunting. But I think that it's something that has to be considered, like Major League Baseball does, for having a pool reporter talk to an umpire or the umpiring chief after a playoff game. There might be some logic to it, particularly now when you consider that every aspect of a sporting event, particularly when it comes to sports betting, has become a factor, and people want and demand more information and want to understand that things are done fairly and understand interpretations. I would not be surprised that that's something that I know there's lots of people that are reticent about it, don't want anything to do with it, but you're going to have to consider it at some point if it's successful. And we've seen cracks in armor when you now get views inside the war room in Toronto, the situation room where they're making decisions on replays and goals. Maybe perhaps when it comes to important games, playoff games, Stanley Cup final, there could be some sort of liaison between a pool reporter and one of the officials that made a key call.
Yeah, I don't like it. I just don't know how many times you need to hear the phrase, "Yeah, I screwed up." That's what it's gonna be. John,
interpretation, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully, there's interpretation. Or even worse than "I screwed up," I didn't see it.
Yeah. Those are the two things you'd hear the most of. Cole, Suter, Bluger. What are your thoughts on the Canucks and what they did in the offseason?
I like a lot of the little stuff. I love Ian Cole as a player. I think that wherever he's played, there's been success, whether it be in Colorado, whether it be in Tampa. I think, and in Pittsburgh, I think Ian Cole will be a valuable, simple defenseman for the Canucks. I think that's a really good move. Teddy Bluger didn't get much playing time when he got traded to Vegas in the Stanley Cup playoffs. But I'll tell you what, he I think will become a fan favorite very quickly in Vancouver, being that third line center, doing some special team stuff, particularly killing penalties. I like a lot of the little stuff the Canucks did. They still have a ways to go, but I think they're starting to build a team that Rick Tocchet can work with to create some structure. And I think the team will be much more impactful, particularly early in the season, where there's always seems to be a problem with Vancouver. And that, to me, is a big part.
John, lots of fear-mongering in Vancouver a week ago when Elias Pettersson said, you know what, I'm going to hold on with my contract. I'm not going to sign. I want to, Canucks control him for 2 more years. But your thoughts on Pettersson making the decision to just put the brakes on the contract talks for a while?
Well, Rick, here's the thing, and I think you have to respect the player in this situation. What's the cap going to be in 2 years?
Yeah.
And that is the key to everything now.
Yep.
How much flexibility will Vancouver have next summer? Do you remember the year that Steven Stamkos did the whole tour of the NHL, and particularly when he came to Toronto and Montreal and Ottawa, and how many times he asked, what are you going to do with your contract? And finally they put it to bed just before free agency that late June.
Yep.
We're now analyzing contracts 2 years out.
That's right.
I mean, come on. And particularly with the fluctuation of what's going on with the cap, when we think it's going to go up 4.5 next year, and who knows what it will be the year after. And you know as well as I do that Jim and Patrick will have a good idea next summer what the cap will be a year from there. So I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it. William Nylander's in a similar situation with just 1 year left on his contract in Toronto, and they're being patient on both sides. So I don't. 2 years out, holy smokes, that's an eternity in our business. What are they worried about for a player in 2 years?
Yeah, well, but in defense of the Vancouver fans, John, a lot of big name players have left Canada in the last 2 years. And there's that fear, right? So
I look what's happening in Ottawa.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys can go find the list on social media of the kids, the quality kids, including a guy like Jake Sanderson who signed
5
for
of
the
them.
Max yesterday.
Yeah. 5 of them.
We're talking Ottawa. We're not talking Toronto or Montreal or Vancouver. We're talking Ottawa. People aren't shying away from signing in Canada. They might be shying away from certain organizations at key times because they don't like the situation they're in. It's not a Canadian thing. It's a team thing with players don't sign.
Your thoughts on the Austen Matthews contract? Some thought it could have been longer, but hey, 4 is 4. He thought it out. There's the number there. I wonder what Connor McDavid's thinking when he's up, but just salary's going up pretty high right now after Matthews.
Well, and you'll appreciate this, Rick. I mean, Austen Matthews and Connor McDavid are now represented by the same guy, Judd Moldaver.
Same guys. Yep. Same guys.
So you know darn well that there's going to be a simple discussion on that side. I think that if you look at what Brad Treliving needed to do and what Austen Matthews needed to do, it was a win-win. Austen didn't want to sign for the max, and therefore Brad didn't feel the need to get past 14. So from that perspective, and here's the other thing. By the time this contract expires, Austen Matthews will have been a Toronto Maple Leaf for 12 years.
Wow.
12 years.
Time
so
flies.
People whining and complaining, well, he didn't sign for 8. No, he didn't. But he will have played in Toronto at the expiration of this new contract, which doesn't start until next year. For 12 seasons. And that's a pretty darn good loyalty, in my opinion, for a player of that ilk.
One more, John, before we let you go. I can't remember if we talked about this before we went on our lengthy break, but what did you make of all these rumors of the Hockey Night in Canada overhaul in the offseason? It doesn't look like it's going to happen.
No, I don't think any. I as I understand it, it's not going to happen. We had Ron on our show last Friday to talk about it, and it sounds like it's status quo. And unlike being a professional athlete where you're covered by a collective bargaining agreement, you're covered by a guaranteed contract all the time. That's not necessarily the case in broadcasting. And so to have rumors get out there all summer long that this is going to happen and that's going to happen is really, it's difficult. And the three of us have been through it ourselves. It's difficult at times, and you have to feel, and there has to be some empathy for everybody involved. But it does sound like, well, we know that Ron's coming back, and obviously Kevin BX has announced that he's coming back if Ron's coming back. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the rest of the crew.
I've never heard that before. Zero security in broadcasting.
Oh,
That's a new one.
Well, it is 11 o'clock, so we'll see it. Might see you at noon. Be good.
Oh, we're jealous.
Wow.
We're jealous. Have a good time in Alberta. Lloydminster today.
Have a great day, boys.
You bet.